buddy. Thank you very much for dialing into the Legend Within series. Today's guest joins us all the way from South Africa. His name is Jack Devnarain. Jack started off his career studying law, and then he joined the police force where he spent 9 years. And in tandem to those 9 years of employment, he pursued his career in acting. He's very well known for the figure Rajesh Kumar on the hit show called Isidingo. In addition to that, he starred in a feature film called 31 Million Reasons, where he took an award for the best leading actor. Also, he's received numerous accolades and awards across the African continent and is featured in several different publications as well. That's not the only reason he's here. He continues to stand up for actors' rights. He's an activist, a humanitarian, and a philanthropist as well. And he's doing a lot of good things in South Africa today that goes behind his passion and his drive and standing for what he believes in. So for those of you that are watching, that are looking to hone in on your craft, maximize your potential, adopt a growth mindset, and become the best version of yourself, this is a great video for you. Jack, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you doing this on your weekend.
Wow, Vishant, what an intro. Thank you. I had no idea I had done so much until you reminded me.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you very much. Jack, I want to dive into a little bit of your background, right? Because of course, there's several people across different regions that really look up to you and admire you. And me based all the way in North America, one of the reasons I reached out to you was primarily because of that, because of what you stand for, what you believe in, and also the drive and determination that goes behind you pursuing your dreams. For example, you studying law, joining the police force, and then still pursuing your acting career as well. A lot of risk and a lot of big transition that goes into that. And I know you've been asked this question many, many times before. I'd like to really understand the drive, the determination that goes behind the passion and the pursuit for your dreams. Talk to me about that.
I love the fact that we can connect across continents about these decisions, these principles that we live by, all the wonderful ideals that are important to us. Because I think it is a universal language. And whether we're talking about the Martin Luther Kings or the Gandhis or the Mandelas of the world, these people are actually around us all the time. And it's such an inspiring element of humanity that I don't believe people are removed from it entirely. Everybody has it around us all the time. And it's for us to be able to practice it in our lives. So, when you look back over my career and all those big transitions that I had, I have to say up front that, performance was always important to me, even as a kid, even in high school. And I studied speech and drama as a matric subject, and I did it again at university. And I came out of university, and look at the time, Rishon. It was 1993 that I graduated. So in 1994 is when I joined the police force. And at that time, South Africa had just become a constitutional democracy. We had changed our political regime. We were now a democracy for the first time in our modern history. So what a time to be of service to the community. What a time to feel as if for the first time, governance of the country centers around the rights of the individual. The rights and the liberties that are now contained in the Bill of Rights for the very first time. So there was now an emphasis being placed on the person. And it just happened at the time I was coming out of university. What a time to be exploring personal liberty. So it never occurred to me, and I suppose this is the strange part. It never occurred to me that I should limit myself in the way I could imagine my future. And the funny thing is, when you are a young man, you don't really think about your future. If you're 19, 20 years old, Rishon, and I said to you, so where do you see yourself when you're 30? You can't see yourself when you're 30.
Right.
You know what you're going to do today, and you know what you might do tomorrow. And that's how it works when you're that age. So all I ever did in my life as a young man was to choose what made sense to me. I loved performance, so I chose performance. I pursued performance. I was studying law because I loved the law. And when it became clear that I didn't have the financial resources to complete my legal studies, I needed to find work. I needed to earn an income. I needed to contribute to my family. I went into law enforcement. I love being amongst people and working with people, working with the law, engaging with the world around me. I'm a physical kind of guy as well. So for me, law enforcement made sense, and it was a natural, logical, and rational extension of what I was studying at university and the kind of person that I am.
Jack, what would you say was one of the biggest challenges that you've had to deal with when making that transition?
I think putting my performance dreams and ambitions on hold was a really, really tough one. Um, Although very quickly, as I absorbed myself in the work of law enforcement, I realized that's a world on its own and that I needed to pay attention to it. At that time, you would remember in 1994, there were huge labor protests, service delivery protests,
Right,
you know, and that was happening nationally. So I find myself as a young man in the middle of these very violent protests, where the city that you and I know so well, Durban, in KwaZulu-Natal,
right,
is being torn apart by violence. And
right,
I'm standing there with a group of other young men, and we are all very earnest about our work, and we want law enforcement to work, and we want to do our best. And at those points, you very quickly forget about what your other dreams and ambitions were. Now you've got to save your life and save the lives of other people and save the city that you live in and protect law and order. And I had to apply myself to becoming the best policeman that I could possibly be. And the lesson that I learned through all of that is, as long as something is important enough to you, it will always be a feature of my life. I never stopped acting. Even in the course of my career as a policeman, I had opportunities. I found and made opportunities to continue my performance and learning every production that I was engaged in as well.
You've been like one of the first South African Indian actors to really become this well-known, popular figure across the country. And so, talk to me a little bit about like how your background and your beginnings has shaped you to become this prolific figure, the Rajesh Kumar of Isidingo, for example.
Yes, I think that's become quite an iconic name as well, because in so many productions that have come up since then, and I'm not sure if you know, but the production Isidingo, after 22 years, finally was cancelled by the channel earlier this year. So it
Wow.
was, yeah, I suppose it was a disappointment for me, because I was on that show for 15 years, and it was a bittersweet farewell. I love the fact that there were some wonderful, very generous and very giving performers who had gone before me, and in a sense, I stand on the shoulders of giants. I remember people like Pat Pillay and Umar Isak and Logan Shanmugam. There were incredible performers. Renika Patha is another good, strong performer. These are amazing people who came out of the magical little Asoka Theatre, which was at the
Wow.
University of Durban, Westville, as it was known back then. And they were all pushing the boundaries in terms of creativity. So when I eventually came onto the scene, I was working closely with them. And I couldn't possibly take all the credit for whatever I've created, especially in my early years on TV and film, because I recognize a lot of them in my own work. And I suppose it was at a time when the transition going from theater to television was still taking place in our Indian community. It had to take place. There was a revolution going on, because as television, the content of television and storytelling changed on South African TV, it was a result of us becoming a constitutional democracy. We had to start telling different stories. We had to tell the stories of South African people. Before that, we were simply telling the story of one group, one racial, one economic sector of South African society. But from 1994 onwards, we had to change that narrative to become more reflective of the reality of our country. So in that mix, I became a part of that Isidingo story because, and here's the business behind it as well, Richard. Um, SABC3 as a channel is the only one of the three channels that does not receive a subsidy from the broadcaster. It generates an income purely out of advertising. So they have to make sure that their content is always right up front. It's the kind of stuff people want to watch. It's going to attract advertisers. And with the advertising revenue, you're going to keep your channel floating. So during the show of 30 minutes duration, Isidingo was speaking to a huge cross-section of South African communities.
Right.
And in that group of audiences is a substantial group of Indian people. So it made commercial sense to include an Indian character on the show who would then represent the ambitions, the interests and the ideals of that Indian audience. And that's how Rajesh Kumar came about. So I became an unwilling poster boy, I suppose, for that Indian audience. And it's something that I took very personally because I made a point of not being that Indian guy. The point for me was to be the best actor I could possibly be on one of South Africa's most loved shows, and to be a character that was completely believable and not the Indian character who was completely believable.
You know, I normally, so I listen to your story, and I normally say that, you know, there's boundaries that have been broken in some cases. And in your story, I don't typically like to say that because I see that you've really had a passion and a pursuit for driving your belief, pursuing your happiness, right? And doing all these things to become this prolific figure and change the norm as well by not portraying the typical Indian character that was expected as well, right? I'd love to understand, you know, just tapping into you. In addition to that, you continuously focusing on your health. And, you know, some of the videos that I watch about you, you're continuously standing up, you're representing young people, not just actors, but you're representing girls, keeping the girls in school as well. And you're doing all this amazing work just for human society. Where does that drive, that passion, that motivation come from?
I cannot tolerate injustice. I do not. I will not. I see it and I react. And I react with all my years of study, of knowledge, of being a responsible social citizen. And I believe that all people should do that. But the reality is not everyone does.
Right.
Too few people do. So if there was something that we cared enough to want to change, then we have to ask, well, what are you going to do about it? Besides talk about it, what do you intend to do? And it's something that also I'm reminded, because it's exactly what you're doing. By engaging with people in order to be inspired and to share the message of inspiration, this is what we're doing. You and I are talking, we're connecting across continents in order to achieve that. For me, that is inspiring, because as much as you and I are talking about these incredible things, we're still going to share the message. And we are going to inspire people to be their best selves and to live their best lives and to be responsible citizens who take responsibility for the world around them. And for me, that is exactly where it comes from. It's not good enough that we sit by and watch somebody struggling by, you know, under the inequities of life. And we have to ask ourselves, if there was something that could be done in order to help this person, why should it not be you who does it? And in answering these questions, we are confronted with our conscience. We are confronted with, well, what's the next step? What are you going to do? Feeling strongly about something simply isn't good enough. A lot of people feel strongly about lots of things. The question is, who will step up to do? And it's become easier over the years for me, I suppose, to be that person. Although I have to say also, part of that decision-making process is how to refine the field in which you believe you can be effective. For example, I wish I could get, you know, people to stop cutting off the fins of sharks and
Right.
whaling. I wish I could do that. I don't believe I'm that person. Can I change something in the acting industry? I believe I can, and I do that day on day. So I have become effective, but selective as well.
You're a very admirable human being, I'll tell you that, with everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you.
I have a lot of respect for what you're doing. So there's a lot of up and coming individuals, well, not just up and coming individuals, there's a lot of experienced individuals as well that have access. Some don't have access to things like technology and ways of communication or ways of taking a stand or ways of doing things. And so one of the things that I'm really trying to do with this show, which is one of the reasons I brought you on, is to give advice and to give guidance and give examples and philosophies, practices on people watching this around that want to take a stand, that want to do things that they believe in, but also want to pursue their happiness. And what would be your advice, your recommendation for the viewers that are watching this?
It all starts with your happiness. It all starts there. And I think when you understand what it is that makes you happy in your life, you start to understand what you're meant to achieve in this lifetime. There are, how many billion people are there on this planet at this given point in time, Vishal? So many people. And some are the ones who like to make decisions. Some are the ones who like others to make decisions for them. And you quickly realize that in order to choose happiness, you have to be the one who is making decisions for you. Put another way, a good analogy would be, if you were shooting the movie of your life, would you play the lead character? Or would you be the background actor, standing in the background while somebody else played you in the movie of your life? I've always held that you have to be the one to pitch up,
Right.
to be the lead actor in your life story. And when you do that, you are choosing your happiness. And when you choose your happiness, you will start to help others to choose theirs. And that is when you start to help. That is when you start to develop a social conscience, where you realize that the happiness of one depends on the happiness of others, as their happiness must also work the other way. So it's an interrelated understanding and satisfaction that grows within community, within families. But the nucleus is always you. When it starts with your happiness, it grows outwards. And I would always say that, yes, you will try to help others achieve their happiness, and you can. But we must never be caught up in trying to create things to do in order to help.
Right.
We so often get caught up in the device that we want to do because, hey, it's going to be the next greatest thing on social media, right? Because we're going to come up with this mad, brilliant idea that's going to trend, and everybody around the world is suddenly going to do this ridiculous thing because we're trying to help. That's not what it's about. You cannot draw attention to what it is you do to help. In fact, it should ideally be completely anonymous. So if I had to ask you, if you want to help someone, help people around you, how can you do it without drawing attention to yourself? So by all means, in your life, be happy, draw attention to yourself, because you should matter to you. But in the effort to help those people around you, it is no longer about you. It is no longer about the latest trending clever hashtag and what it is you intend to post on social media. Because the trap is that becomes about you again. And you have to overcome that if you truly intend to be of service.
Very inspirational, Jack. Very true as well. I so agree with you on that. Thank you. Jack, what do you want to be known for?
It doesn't matter to me if I'm known or not, or remembered or not. It is a byproduct of my work that, being an actor, I will be a recognized media personality and my work is going to be out in the media. But you start to realize that the work that you do is about a lot more than the delivery of your work. And you would see that as well as a leader, in your own journey, in your own corporate organization, in your own territory. The work is not just about the work. The work is a reflection of who you are. And for me, it doesn't matter to me if I am remembered or not, or my work is remembered or not. What matters to me, most of all, is that the difference that I made in my life and the compassion that I brought with it must live on. That must outlive me. That is more important to me than anyone remembering me or what I stood for or my name or my filmography or whatever else that describes it.
What can you share with us today in terms of what you're doing with standing up for actors' rights and standing up for up-and-comers? Anything that you'd like to share around that in terms of, where people can find you as well?
Yes, thank you. Well, we're not going to stop short of a revolution.
Right.
We are trying to create regulations within an industry that has for decades been unregulated. And the reason it's been unregulated is because it allows for gross exploitation of talent and the rights of performers. And I'm not okay with that, and I'm going to change it. And I'm going to change it because long after me, they're going to be young performers and the leaders of the industry still to come in future generations who deserve the right to earn from the exploitation of their work. And if I don't have that now, then surely it's up to me to change that so that they can benefit from it later on. So you'll be interested to know that we have a very close relationship with the South African Guild of Actors, an organization that's a registered non-profit organization. And, it's a guild that I am chairman of.
Right.
And we have a very close working relationship with ACTRA, which is the Canadian Actors Union. And we have a wonderful collaboration. We have learned so much from them because as an actors union, they've been in existence now for probably close to 80 years or so. And they are an enormous inspiration to us. And it's a reminder also that South Africa needs to step up and align itself in terms of its regulatory, the industry regulations that manage all our work needs to be aligned with international best practice. So this is why the relationship is so important. And I encourage people to come and take a look at all our work, even though we are a fledgling industry and a fledgling organization. Saga is running for just over 10 years now. But come and visit us at on our Twitter site. We've got SAG Actors as a Facebook profile as well. We are very active there, posting skills workshops, masterclasses. We love to share insights about the industry and how you can become a better performer, and also to understand yourself as a business a lot better. And from my side on Twitter, JackD157. Interesting 157. That was actually my police constable number when I was still working. So I suppose it's a reflection and a memory of what that other life used to be. But yeah, a lot of my activism goes out on social media. I like to confront the injustice, and I'm not afraid to say it. So
one last and quick example for those watching that are not familiar with the South African Acting Association or the South African Actors' Rights, etc. Right? What's a typical example? Is it like South African actors they participate in the show gets broadcasted, but they don't get like royalties from it or something? Is that
Correct.
what? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you're absolutely spot on with that. South African actors do not have the right to earn royalties. In Canada, for example, you have the right to collective bargaining. So you can get together with with the producers and the broadcasters and the actors and the crew, and everybody sits together and they decide, how do we regulate this industry? That is the process of collective bargaining. In South Africa, actors are considered freelancers in the same way that Canadian actors are considered freelancers. The difference is that Canadian actors are freelancers with the right to engage in collective bargaining. In South Africa, we are freelancers that do not have the right to engage in collective bargaining. We do not have the right to form unions or belong to them. We do not have the right to be protected under labor law, and we do not have the right to earn royalties. We're coming off a low base here. So we have so much to fight for. And it is so urgent that while we are looking at, for example, your show being broadcast, on YouTube, and you've got your channel is quite popular, all this has opened up in the last 10 years or so. And there's more and more audiovisual content being created, generated, downloaded, and viewed globally every day. But the regulatory environment in which South African actors in particular have to work means that our rights have not kept track of technology. And working, as you do, it means that all the work that you do in your corporate life is very strictly regulated by statute. It has to be. But we are looking for the same kind of regulation because it's just the way industries are regulated around the world.
Jack, I love that you're standing up for this, and I love that the representation that you perform on a regular basis for these actors and for yourself as well. It's very inspirational, motivational, and admirable at the same time. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm watching you. One of the main things I walk away with just by talking to you, listening to you, and observing you prior to this interview as well is your drive, determination, and your passion, and just being a good human being and impacting human society. And so I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
It's a pleasure. And if you ever need news from home, you're welcome to dial me up anytime. Connect with me, talk. Let's chat again on your wonderful channel. It's a brilliant video blog. I feel the inspiration, and more importantly, I feel what it is you're trying to achieve with this as well. It's something I also take very personally. It's something I support, and I look forward to continuing to support you.
I look forward to that. Thank you very, very much, Jack.